Hey everyone, welcome back to Life Turns, the place where real emotions, tough lessons, and unforgettable stories come alive. Today's story, it's not just about Thanksgiving. It's about family, betrayal, and realizing that sometimes, blood doesn't mean love. So, sit tight, because this one still hurts to talk about. It all started a few weeks before Thanksgiving. I was the one who offered to host this year's dinner, and not just any dinner. I wanted to go big. I'd been working hard, got a promotion, and honestly, I wanted my family to feel proud of me. So, I booked a professional catering service, rented an event space, and spent nearly $10,000 to make it perfect. I thought this would be a Thanksgiving to remember, for all the right reasons. But I was wrong. My sister, Hannah, and I have always had a rocky relationship. She's older, louder, and somehow always finds a way to make everything about herself. Still, I wanted peace. I wanted our kids to grow up close, not caught in the middle of grown-up tension. So I told myself, let's start fresh. The week before the dinner, I sent her the menu: roasted turkey, honey-glazed ham, truffle mac and cheese, lobster bisque, and a dozen sides that screamed luxury. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. Typical Hannah. But I didn't let it bother me. I was focused on creating memories. Thanksgiving Day came faster than I expected. The hall looked magical, candlelight, golden plates, soft jazz playing in the background. Everyone showed up dressed to impress. My parents hugged me, my cousins took photos for Instagram, and even Hannah smiled for once. For a brief moment, I thought, maybe this time will be different. Maybe we'll actually have a happy family dinner. Then, reality hit me harder than the winter wind outside. The feast began, and everyone filled their plates with the best dishes I'd ever seen served at a family event. My son, Ethan, he's only 8, waited patiently for everyone to get theirs first. That's how I raised him. Respectful, kind, never greedy. When it was finally his turn, I told him to grab a plate. He smiled and walked up, his little hands barely reaching the table. But then Hannah stopped him. She laughed, loud enough for the whole room to hear, and said, "Oh, come on, let's leave the good stuff for the older kids. Ethan can have what's left." The room went quiet. I froze. I thought she was joking, so I forced a smile. But she didn't stop. She leaned toward her son, Brandon, who's 12, and said, "Go ahead, sweetie. Get the lobster and truffle mac before it's gone." Brandon piled his plate high, overflowing with food I paid for, while my son stood there, empty-handed. That's when my heart sank. I tried to stay calm. I said, "It's okay, Ethan, go ahead. There's plenty for everyone." But Hannah cut me off again. "Relax, it's just food. He'll be fine with leftovers." Her tone wasn't playful. It was sharp, cold, almost cruel. I could see Ethan's face fall. He looked at the plates filled with fancy dishes and then at the small bowl of mashed potatoes left behind. He whispered, "It's okay, Mom. I'm not that hungry." That broke me. Because I knew he was. He'd been excited all week, talking about how he couldn't wait to try everything. I took a deep breath and said, "No, honey, you're eating the same as everyone else." I grabbed a fresh plate and began serving him, but Hannah rolled her eyes and muttered, "You're so dramatic. It's Thanksgiving, not the Oscars." People laughed, not everyone, but enough to make my hands shake. I looked around that table, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I belonged there. As the night went on, I tried to smile, tried to pretend everything was fine. But inside, I was shattered. I'd spent weeks planning this dinner, not just for the food, but for the meaning behind it. I wanted togetherness. Family. Warmth. But instead, I watched my sister treat my child like he was less deserving, in front of everyone. Later that night, when people were dancing and chatting, I found Ethan sitting alone near the dessert table, quietly picking at a slice of pumpkin pie. I knelt beside him and asked, "You okay, buddy?" He just shrugged and said, "Maybe Aunt Hannah doesn't like me." I hugged him tight and said, "That's not true. Some people just forget what kindness looks like." But deep down, I knew this wasn't just forgetfulness. It was envy. Hannah had always been jealous. She used to mock me for being too ambitious, for trying too hard. She once said I acted like I was better than everyone just because I worked in the city. But I never saw it that way. I just wanted to make my family proud. That night, when everyone left, I stayed back to clean up. The caterers were packing, the music had stopped, and I just stood there staring at the half-eaten dishes, lobster shells, wine glasses, and the tiny empty spot on the buffet where my son's plate should have been. And then it hit me, I had paid $10,000 for a meal that made my own child feel unwanted. That realization cut deeper than anything Hannah could have said. I walked outside, the cold air biting my cheeks, and I promised myself something right there. This would be the last Thanksgiving I'd ever spend being treated like less by people I tried to impress. Family isn't just who you're born with. It's who shows up for you with love and respect. I didn't say a word to Hannah that night. But I could see her smirk as she left, arm around her son, holding leftovers she didn't even deserve. I just watched them walk away, and I knew something inside me had changed. That was the NIGHT I stopped chasing approval. Because sometimes, the hardest life turn comes when you realize your biggest investment wasn't in food or celebration, but in people who never deserved a seat at your table. A few months passed after that Christmas dinner, and life started feeling lighter. I didn't realize how much emotional space Hannah had taken up until I let her go. My days felt calmer. Ethan laughed more. We started our own small family traditions, pancake Sundays, movie nights, and dinner without drama. For the first time in a long time, home felt peaceful. But peace doesn't always last without being tested. One chilly morning in February, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice sounded worried. "Sweetheart, can you come by the house? Your sister, she's having a hard time." I hesitated. My instinct said no. I wasn't ready to walk back into that emotional storm. But then Mom said, "Please. She needs help." And no matter how angry I was, I couldn't completely ignore her. So I went. When I got there, Hannah was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, messy hair, the usual confidence nowhere to be seen. I stood there quietly before saying, "You wanted to see me?" She looked up slowly. "Yeah. I messed up," she said. Her voice cracked a little. "Brandon's been having a hard time at school. He's getting bullied. They make fun of him because I post too much about our life online. They call him spoiled." I stayed silent. She took a deep breath. "I know I've been awful to you. And to Ethan. I guess I didn't realize how much damage I was doing trying to look perfect. I always felt like you had everything together. I wanted to prove I could too." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive her right there. Another part wanted to remind her of every cruel word she'd thrown at me. But then I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone broken, not hateful. Someone who'd built walls out of jealousy, not strength. I sat down across from her and said quietly, "You don't need to prove anything to anyone, Hannah. Least of all to me. But you can't build yourself up by tearing other people down, especially not your own family." She nodded, tears rolling down her face. "I know. I'm sorry. For Thanksgiving. For everything." The words hung heavy in the air. I wanted to believe her, and maybe, for the first time, I did. Not because her apology fixed the past, but because I finally didn't need it to. I had already healed by choosing peace. We talked for hours. About our childhood, our parents, the way competition had crept into every part of our lives. It wasn't easy, but it felt honest. When I left that day, I didn't feel anger anymore, just understanding. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. The next Thanksgiving came around, and my parents wanted us to celebrate together again. I agreed, on one condition: it would be small, simple, and everyone brought something to share. No catering, no expensive feast, no show-off. Just real food and real family. When the day came, I watched Hannah walk in carrying a homemade pie. She smiled awkwardly and said, "I made this myself." I could tell she was trying. Ethan, now a little older, ran up and said, "Hi, Aunt Hannah." She knelt down and hugged him tight. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, "I saved you the first slice." That moment, small as it was, made my chest tighten. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was real change. Throughout dinner, I kept thinking about how life turns in the most unexpected ways. One Thanksgiving, I paid $10,000 for pain. The next, I spent almost nothing, but felt richer than ever. As everyone talked and laughed, I realized something powerful: forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you. It's for you. It's the moment you stop letting their actions control your peace. After dinner, Hannah pulled me aside and said, "I'm not expecting you to forget. But thank you for still showing up." I smiled and said, "That's what family does, we show up. But from now on, we do it with love, not competition." She nodded, eyes glassy. "Deal." That night, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he said something that made my heart swell. "Mom, this Thanksgiving was better. Nobody was mean this time." I smiled and kissed his forehead. "You're right, sweetheart. Because we learned how to be thankful for the right things." He grinned sleepily. "Like family?" "Exactly," I said softly. "But only the kind that treats you with kindness." When I turned off the light, I sat quietly for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. The money, the hurt, the confrontation, the forgiveness. All of it had led me here, to peace. And that's when it hit me: life doesn't always turn the way you plan it. Sometimes it turns you toward pain, betrayal, and heartbreak. But if you stay strong, it eventually turns you toward healing, strength, and freedom. We can't control how people treat us, but we can control how we rise from it. That's what I want everyone listening to remember: never let someone's bitterness make you question your worth. Never let their jealousy define your peace. And most importantly, never apologize for setting boundaries that protect your happiness. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's living right. So if you've ever been made to feel small by someone who should have loved you bigger, take this story as your reminder: you don't need to fight for a seat at the wrong table. You can build your own, and fill it with people who celebrate you. And maybe, just maybe, one day, they'll learn what real love looks like. Thanks for listening to this story on Life Turns. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because your next life turn might be just one story away.